Good morning, afternoon, or evening, and welcome to the Bloody Disgusting Network. The following show is just horrifying. Beware.
You're obsessed with her, and you're obsessed with her daughter!
All right, easy, Geraldo.
And welcome back to Horror Queers. We're talking Ray fucked me. We're talking Callista Flockhart skeletons, and we're talking My Pussy's Gone Crazy. And I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace, and we're talking My Strong Hand. I'm a little pissed off because I was 100% gonna... No. The Strong Hand's the most obvious fucking one, Joe. And I was 100%... I was gonna do, this is skeleton! This is bones! Best line of the movie.
You still got it in, so there you go. We're both happy.
Everyone, we are talking Scary Movie 2, and... Oh man, Joe, I think this is our first foray into this type of film.
Absolutely. Yes, folks, this is our first parody film. We have covered a lot of horror comedies, but I don't know that this movie is scaring anybody except people who are easily offended, in which case this film may just be a nightmare.
Yeah, there's a lot. This movie is very much of its time, and there's a lot going on here. I find it fascinating because I actually have a lot of nostalgia about this movie in particular, and so it was different. It was a very interesting experience rewatching it as a 31-year-old compared to when I was, say, 15.
Oh yes, this is very firmly a film from the year of our Lord 2001. So happy 20th anniversary, Scary Movie 2.
Oh, is that why we picked it? Oh my god.
I don't know if it's from this week specifically, but it definitely came out 20 years ago.
Well, I was always,
year.
When you put it on the schedule, I was like, that's fine. I like Scary Movie 2, but I was always like, well, obviously our thing is Scream, and I know you did last summer. It's like, why weren't we doing the first one? But this makes sense. That being said, I do think that 2 is most people's favorite entry in this franchise.
We're gonna find out.
We will. But before we go too much further, we actually have a very special guest on this episode, so let's bring her in. All right, everyone. She has been dubbed the Oprah of Horror and is the host and creator of the popular YouTube channel Horror Movies and Beyond, which, well, pretty much does everything. This woman is busy. But, some highlights of her show, actually, are behind-the-scenes retrospectives on popular horror films, charting the evolution of horror and addressing why it's so important to the film industry. She addresses, why things are being remade and rebooted, specific, IP-centric things on that. Everyone, please welcome Ivotres Littles.
Hi. Yay. Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm excited. Yes.
Yay! Oh, man. So, welcome to Scary Movie 2. Miss Oprah of Horror, by the way. Where did that come from?
Oh, man. Well, it's a kind of a short story, but I'll try to make it even shorter. I don't know.
That's fine.
Well, I got invited to a birthday party, and to John Massari's birthday. He's the composer of Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Mm-hmm. And nice. I was like, it was so beautiful. His party was so elegant, and he had Hollywood people there, and and so at the time, me and my boyfriend was just I felt like I was just starting into getting into horror movies and beyond. I haven't even really started the whole image of that yet, so I was still working on it, and I needed a catchy phrase, and I just so happened to speak to someone who was kind of like a personal coach, like a life coach or something like that. And she was there for his birthday, and I was sitting there, and I was like, man, I really want a catchy phrase. And she's like, yeah, you need something like that so people could, that's something they could grab onto. A lot of people have that. And she said, Oprah has that. And I was like, Oprah? I said, oh, like the Oprah of Horror? And she said, she was like, keep that.
Yeah, that's yours right then and there. Right?
Yeah, she's like, keep that. And I was like, really? And she was like, yeah, that is catchy. We all know who Oprah is. And then there's
Mhm.
horror. So then we'll know what kind of person you are, what they're going to expect just by that title. And so I kept it.
That is amazing.
Because it's her name, and I don't put it on anything. Illegal reasons.
Right.
Right, of course.
Yeah, it's not on shirts, it's not on anything, but it is a hashtag and it is directly towards me. So if you click or make that hashtag anywhere, I would pop up.
Nice.
That's
Okay.
honestly a
So-
really good marketing technique, though. I really like that. But you're right; it's catchy and it works, and it's on a hashtag.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't want to put it on anything. I would love to, but
Oprah, have your people call.
yeah, I think I would have to ask permission because everybody, I mean, there's probably another person in the world named Oprah, but her name is so huge, they'll automatically put it to her. And I don't want her people to be like, hey, what's this? So, or think I'm using her image or name. People are like that. I'm not saying she's like that, but she has like, 100 lawyers?
Let's not invite that.
Yeah, that would find any reason in a law book or something. So hopefully it'll get to her and then she'll be intrigued. And,
There you
I'll
go.
be sitting on her couch and, on her network trying to explain where did the Oprah of Horror come from.
Oh my god, we
Right.
should have been watching Scary Movie 4 because that movie ends with the Tom Cruise parodying like jumping on Oprah's couch, bitch. That would have been really
Oh,
apt.
no.
It's not good.
So,
Well, that's awesome. So, hey, I have a question that I always ask guests on our show because, yes, like, normally what we do is we send out our list of films and we say, hey, cool, like pick something that you want to talk about. You picked Scary Movie 2, and I would like to ask you why.
because I really think that movie is really funny and really good for its time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I really do love the Wayans. I watched In Living Color, so I'm very familiar. I grew up. I remember the first episode of In Living Color. It used to come out on
Wow.
Sundays. I think it was either after or before The Simpsons. Probably after. But yeah, then I think after that was Arsenio Hall. So I grew up during those times. But it really captured so many things and it's very edgy. And it really touched on things like that movie could not be made today.
Oh,
Neither can
God,
the
no.
first one. No, it would offend so many people, but it's timeless, it's funny. They make parodies of old classic films as well as the ones during the late 90s,
Mm-hmm.
the remakes of those and and I mean it was all-star cast. It's just good. And I saw that in the theater and I laughed my ass off.
Mm.
I was 100% not allowed to see this in a movie theater. So this came out, I was 12 years old. And I remember
Oh wow.
I know. But I was in 8th grade and my mom had gone out of town for like a week because my mom was a stay-at-home mom and she like did a lot of PTA stuff, but she for some reason she went to go visit her mother for like a week. And my dad rented me and my sister like a bunch of R-rated horror movies, but he also rented us Scary Movie 1 and 2. And my sister didn't watch scary movies, so while my dad and I were watching, like, I don't know, like Halloween H2O or Deep Blue Sea or something, my sister was upstairs, and my sister is 2 years younger than me, so I was 13, she was 11, and she watched Scary Movie 1 by herself.
Oh, no.
Wow.
I remember watching it with my dad later, and he, halfway through, he just looks at me and goes, I cannot believe your sister watched this.
Oh.
And then while we were watching the first one, she was watching the second one. And I don't know which one is more crude, but yes, you're absolutely right. Like watching this, my mindset was, there is no way this could be made today. Absolutely not.
No.
No. Yeah. It is such a time capsule in that regard where you're thinking, I'm surprised they even managed to get away with this at the time. But then when you watch it from the 2021 mentality, it's like, oh God, no, absolutely not.
Well, that first one made so much money that I bet you they had carte blanche to do whatever the fuck they wanted for this movie. And I have this on DVD, and in one, there's like a little 8-minute featurette, like of the making of the movie or whatever. And Marlon Wayans, he says, like, you can't think about not offending people. You just have to go for jokes. 1 or 2 people
Right.
might get offended along the way, but if the majority is laughing, then it's all good.
Mm-hmm. That
So-
is true.
Yeah, I mean, I think comedy's in an interesting place right now. Again, I hate saying cancel culture because I fucking...
Oh, God, no. Let's say consequences culture. That's what we're actually talking about.
Consequences culture. No, but I feel like the world of comedy has taken the biggest hit in this because, yeah, like a lot of like quote unquote funny comedy is offensive comedy, and that's kind of come out of the spotlight in the past couple years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really sad. That's why I'm glad I grew up during the times where it was like everyone could see a rated R in the theater. I mean, I was 10 years old, by myself. Well, not by myself, but well, with other young teens and stuff, we just, get dropped off and, we're watching, Texas Chainsaw or something.
God.
It was just the thing. I saw The Blob, I saw The Fly. I mean,
amazing.
It's just, and probably in I want to say 96 they started only having, you had to have a parent with you.
Yeah.
If you're 17 or younger, you need to have a parent, and then after that, no. So it was like, oh, I can't wait till I turn 18 so I can
so I can see these fucking movies again.
It was really... that's funny that you say that because I worked at an AMC theaters when it was around like... I was 16 or 17, so it would have been like 2006-ish. And you know how like the way with America, like the US is way more strict on like sexual things than it is with violent things. So whenever I was taking tickets, we would always, check IDs at the door, like when you're selling the ticket. But for certain movies, they would set up extra like barriers at the door to the auditorium to check the ticket stubs and IDs again. And it was always for movies like Jackass, like those kinds of movies.
Yeah, I worked at AMC. It's true.
But it's so weird, right? Because these movies, and I'm thinking specifically about films like Jackass and also the scary movies, they're obviously R-rated comedies, but they seem so deliberately intended for teenage audiences, and more specifically male teenage audiences.
I remember, and I think maybe that's why I remember so much the second one. I will confess that I didn't like this as much on a rewatch. I still have like some nostalgia goggles on where like bits of it I still find really funny, but as a whole when it ended I was kind of like, oh, like I didn't particularly care for that. But I remember being in middle school and everyone was talking about the strong hand. Everyone was talking about the semen explosion. There were so many things in this movie that, again, are very offensive that a bunch of my friends had seen because they were 12 and 13 years old, somehow getting parents to take them to go see this movie.
Oh my God. I mean, I was not that young, but I definitely did see both of these first two films with my father in the theater. And let me tell you about a cringe moment. Those semen explosion scenes do not go down well when you are sitting next to your elderly father.
Your elderly.
Elderly. He's like 80 years old.
He was there with a cane and a bad head. No, he was just very... I think he was actually more uncomfortable than I was because, I was underage and I don't know. I think I didn't fully... I understood what it was, but at the same time I was like, haha, this is just like a body humor. And my dad was like, oh, fuck, we're watching semen explosions right now.
I think that's the biggest one. Even in that first movie when, is it John Abrahams? I think that's his name.
Yes. When
he blasts on a fair set ceiling and his body he turns skeletal
Shrivels.
because
he's just all pent up. Yep.
Those are good times. I mean, that was kind of I think a little bit after that, if not before, maybe a little bit after that, Team America.
That was after.
Oh God.
Yeah. After that. So movies were still being very offensive, but funny. And I'm a real, a funny point about Team America, and then we can move on.
Yeah.
But the reason I brought that up was when I went to the theater, it was me, my ex, and then our two friends. That when we walked in and look, you walk through the hall and you look at the seats, it was filled with children.
Oh no!
Oh yeah!
Parents and kids and young adults, and I was
because they saw puppets, right?
Yeah, and I stood there, and we all looked at each other. There were some adults like us, but I was like, none of these people know who Matt Stone and Trey Parker.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's seen, South Park. Nobody's seen Orgasmo. Nobody's seen anything in here. They just saw puppets because in the trailer they can't show much.
Yeah.
Right.
So when it first start, America, fuck you. No, actually it was the Rent parody. Everyone has AIDS.
Yes.
Oh my
yes,
goodness.
God.
I laughed so much and people were leaving with their kids.
Well,
Yes,
no, I mean,
yes.
honestly, a recent example of that phenomenon is Sausage Party, with the Seth Rogen movie. When that movie came out, people were taking their kids to go see it because, again, that's not even based on another IP like South Park was, but it was this cartoon movie about talking food. And even the new Harley Quinn show, like, there's a Blu-ray coming out, and there's a sticker on it that says, like, this is a mature show. This is not for children, even though it's a cartoon.
Yeah, because people can't wrap their heads around the fact that, like, comedies can be raunchy and animated fare can be for adults. It's like we're so singularly minded sometimes it's a little ridiculous.
I'm glad you brought up Team America, though, so we could loop back to South Park, because so much of Scary Movie 2, not so much, but I feel like that this film does rely more on timely references to parody as opposed to, like, horror movie tropes in general, which very much reminds me of South Park. South Park has that rapid turnaround where it's like, oh, like something happens on Friday, the episode comes out the next Wednesday, and they've already, like, addressed this social issue, right? So I wanted to just kind of go through a little lesson just for us and our listeners to kind of talk about what a parody is, because I also think that the terms parody and satire are used interchangeably by people, and they are very much not the same thing.
Yeah.
So for this little lesson, basically, everyone, a parody is also called a spoof. It's a creative work designed to imitate, comment on, and or make fun of its subject by means of satiric or ironic imitation.
Makes sense.
Often, it is the subject of an original work or some aspect of it, theme/content, author, style, etc. But a parody can also be about a real-life person, event, or movement. And this is really what you see on South Park a lot. I feel like that's the biggest, like, widespread example of what you can tell someone what a parody is.
Yeah, whereas Scary Movie is more like it's an original work based on the content of things like Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer, and in this case, Hill House and that kind of shit.
Yes. But the big, like, distinguisher between parody and satire. So parody's primary aim is to amuse by aping something which others can recognize. So yeah, like, you go see this, if people saw The Haunting 4 years before, they're going to get that. People have seen The Exorcist. They know what the opening scene is doing. Beyond that, there's very little deeper motive other than to critique the work. So that's the other thing, too. Parody is critiquing whatever it is parodying. But they're also focused on ridiculing them, and it's very surface level. There's not really a deeper meaning to it, which is also why some people think that parodies don't have a long-lasting impact. Like, again, like, people remember 1 and 2 because I think that there's a nostalgia factor there, and, like, kind of growing up as the internet was kind of reaching its apex, I guess I'm gonna say.
Sure.
But there's been a lot of other parodies that have come out before this that, I mean, again, with the exception of something like Airplane or Spaceballs, that hasn't really stood the test of time, depending on what it's parodying, right?
Yeah, I remember there was that string of really terrible parodies. They all came out after these, but like where they were making fun of like the Narnia films, and you were just like, these movies are so cheaply and badly made. They're just desperate for laughs. But yeah, like nobody talks about them anymore because they didn't have any kind of impact. They don't have a legacy to them.
Yeah, and they did one with Gladiator.
Yes, there's Meet the Spartans, there's Date Movie, there's Disaster Movie, there's Superhero Movie, there's Dance Flick, which is actually a Wayans Brothers movies, and they also did A Haunted House 1 and 2, like, all of these. I mean, again, Ivotres, you didn't even know Scary Movie 5 existed, and that's not a knock. That's not a knock. That's an understandable thing to not know, because no one cares about Scary Movie 5.
We've just forgotten about it, because by that point it was like, who could care?
Yeah. Now, the satire aspect, the important thing of satire. So, and going with the past episode, everyone, I'm thinking the best example of satire we've done on this show is American Psycho. Yeah. A work of satire uses humor, particularly irony and exaggeration, to expose flaws in human behavior. Satire intends to ridicule people's idiocy or vices or make some kind of social or political commentary. It is focused on the bigger picture and deeper things as opposed to surface level. And it's also like, it's not satirizing an IP, if that makes any sense, you know? So, like, American Psycho is like a satire of white privilege.
Consumerism. Yeah.
Consumerism. Dawn of the Dead is a satire of American consumerism, you know? But it's not necessarily like, you know, laugh out loud slapstick funny. Not to say that parody only uses slapstick.
No, but parody is really focused on the joke as opposed to satire, which is like, you can have satirical horror films that are still scary.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think also parody exaggerates what is ridiculous.
Right.
I do see that. You're just kind of like, when you watch, you know, there's a lot of scenes where I've watched a scary movie too, and you're just like, they take it to the next level because I think they're trying to show you like, yeah, this is funny, but if we put it in this situation, this is also funny, but look how ridiculous it is. It's exaggerated.
And I think that's when the movie works the best. I think, and we'll talk about this a bit, but I think when it relies on you, like, it's when parody, if you have to know what it's referencing to get the joke, I think that's when parody fails. I don't know. I mean, we can talk about it with certain things. I'm thinking specifically about the fucking Nike commercial that's 2 minutes long in this movie.
Then that's why you should only make a movie that's based on parodies on popular movies. Because then you're guaranteed everyone will know what you're talking about. Well, mostly everyone will know what you're talking about.
Well, it's also kind of trying to predict like what's going to be timeless, right? Like, again, like if we're using this Nike commercial as an example, like, again, if you grew up in that time period, you might remember that commercial. Yeah. Anyone who is a teenager now will not get that, whereas they will get a reference to The Exorcist. I mean, you would hope they would. Yeah. But I'm glad you mentioned the exaggeration, because there are mainly 3 tools of parody. One is exaggeration, which takes an aspect of the original serious version and pushes it to the extreme. One example that I found, which is actually very true, is like Robert Downey Jr. dyeing his skin in Tropic Thunder.
Oh my gosh, I love that film.
It's so good.
Love it.
Also very offensive, right?
Yeah, it's very offensive, but it worked. And I think it worked for him, because when Ben Stiller, it was, I guess, written or story or something he was saying, when Ben Stiller came up to him, he said no like 100 times. He was like, nah, man, my career is just going. Iron Man just, what are you trying to pull? He's like, oh, hell no. But he was like, man, it'll work, I swear. And he turned it down. He had to break in his house and put the script down his throat in order. But I think he kind of took it because there's another black guy on there. And I think it worked because it was this black guy trying to show how ridiculous this guy is, playing a black dude, be Australian. But it was for a role he was trying to play. But I guess it didn't work through, so he just kept it into the role of the Tropic Thunder that we're doing. So that's why it worked. Now, I think if he was by himself,
right?
Yes,
it would look as blackface, and it would have just been horrible. But because the other black dude was really black, was making fun of him, trying to be black for a character he's not, it worked. And that's the only way it'll work. If they did that movie now, if it even showed a trailer, his whole career would be gone.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I mean, again, that's also like, it's because it would have looked like a movie. Oh, it's a bunch of white guys making a movie about this character who is essentially doing not even blackface, it's like black body. It's like
black
everything
body.
Black.
My black friends went to see that film, and when I actually saw it in a theater, and it was packed with black people, which I thought was kind of, because when I was kind of like, well, this is different. Like, because because of the movie, you're not sure, but it was packed, and I was like, I never see so many people laughing, enjoying themselves. I've had my friends come to me, my black friends, tell me, oh my God, he was spot on. Like, he's truly a brother. They don't know if he hung out with black people or something, but watching that, he is spot on that kind of personality that is out there. I don't know what his reference. I would love to ask him, but man, it was that good. It was perfect.
It's a gamble, though. It's always a
Yeah.
I think with especially with offensive humor, it's a gamble. And again, we'll get into that with this movie too, because I feel like there's a couple gambles.
Some that pay off and some that don't.
In addition to exaggeration, we have inversion, which involves flipping the terms of an accepted system of values. Good becomes bad, bad becomes good. You could look at The Onion for a lot of this. An example would be gay teen worried he might be Christian, which flips the Christian worried he might be gay. That's the parody there.
Right.
There's also trivialization, which takes a serious topic and treats it as if it's silly or insignificant. And that's really where Scary Movie falls. You can also look at it as, well, I'm sorry, that's really that and exaggeration. But Austin Powers, like trivializing action sequences, intensity, and casual sex of the James Bond franchise.
Right.
But the only other thing, it's been around for a very long time. It's not a modern phenomenon. I didn't know this, but Jane Austen's 19th century novel Northanger Abbey is a parody of Gothic fiction. But all too often with parody, the humor is lost. This is where I was coming from, by the way. The humor is lost on those unfamiliar with the source being parodied. So if you've never read any Gothic fiction, the humor of Northanger Abbey will be unclear. I've never read that book, so I can't speak for it, but that's how I feel sometimes with, again, after I watched all of these Scary Movie movies today, and there were so many things where I was like, I know what they're making fun of here, but
a lot of people won't.
Yeah, and so I'm interested to see if like something like what works for us and what doesn't work for us, because I know we're going to disagree about some of these things because we all come from different backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
So the only other thing is because I think that doing a parody of horror films is a great idea, because comedy and horror as genres are very linked to each other in that they both transgress the norm to tell their stories. For horror, it's a notoriously excessive genre. You know, it to kind of get through the crowded marketplace, because again, like there's like a horror movie coming out every week now that we have streaming platforms now. So much of horror relies on shocking, you know, oh, like people have already seen this, let's give them this other thing that's going to be even more shocking, and that also leads to viewer desensitization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like we talked about last week on your birthday episode, Trace, when we talked about exploitation. So there's profit to be made in causing outrage and becoming a point of discussion.
Yes, and actually that was really because when discussing this, I was like, oh, Scary Movie 2 is very much a time capsule, just like fucking Freeway, because Freeway could also not be made today.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then the only other thing, comedy, again, also pushes boundaries. Like when there's something about Mary, the hair gel scene, when that hit theaters in, 98? Like that fucking threw people off, because it was like, oh, you're seeing this movie? Oh, this hair gel scene is so funny because it's cum.
Mm-hmm.
In a mainstream film.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
Yeah. That movie was a sensation too, right? I mean, I think part of this too is that there's a communal aspect to when these films strike big, they have their finger on the pulse, and to be part of that crowd experience and to revel in the humor. Like, part of this, I think, is that Scary Movie 2 didn't work 100% well for me, because I'm sitting here in my isolated apartment. Like, if it's in a crowded audience with people who are laughing, I'm way more inclined to find it funny.
That's fair. I mean, again, there are things that I laughed heartily at a lot in this movie. I think my issue stems from more like just as a structure of the film, because I think, and again, out of all the films in the franchise, this one has the thinnest plot.
Right.
Not that it really matters at the end of the day.
No, it's true, but you need a good foundational bone structure to lay your jokes on, and I think part of what you're about to tell us about the film's production is that they were working with not the greatest situation to try to get this movie made, right?
Well, let's look at this. So Scary Movie 1 has a budget of $19 million. It comes out July 7th of 2000 and opens with $42 million.
Oh man, he was not. Like, that is so much money, people. So much money.
Yeah. Worldwide, it ends with $277 million. Again, on a $19 million budget. So basically, the Monday after it opens, the studio calls the Wayans brothers and goes, let's do another one. Also, it needs to be out by next summer. So Scary Movie 2 opens July 4th weekend. A year later, they basically, from pre-production to post-production to release of the film, it took 9 months, which is about half the time that any other film was doing at the time, at least for a studio film.
Right.
The Wayans brothers supposedly watched 130 movies to research for this film.
I'm willing to bet that was when they were making the first one / when they were developing this one. Like, I don't think you could watch 133 movies in that time span.
I think that would take the 9 months, right?
Somebody else is making the movie. We're going to sit here and watch all these movies instead.
Well, they probably had other people sitting and watching with them. So it wasn't
Right,
just
yeah.
them. They all, his brother has a, production studio. They probably had assistants. We were all going to sit here. We all going to write down, or his whole family. What is it, like 100 of them?
Right?
How many Wayans
all
are
sat down.
there?
I think there's 7 or 8. No, 10. No, it is 10. Because I remember it's 10 because 5 are in show business and 5 are not. I remember
God.
that.
That is
Can you imagine being the 5 that are not? You're just like,
And the 5 were all in Living Color. It's Marlon, Sean,
Keenen.
the sister.
that's a sister. Okay.
Yeah, oh my God. Yeah, it was like,
This is basically the Jackson family, only
Yeah.
with the Wayans.
yeah, I think it's like 10 of them. Maybe
Wow.
more. I don't know. But I know there was 5 they said in show business. 5 or
God.
4 in show business.
Well, speaking of lots of numbers, this movie has 7 writers.
That's probably all it is.
Yeah, 7 writers, 3 of them are Wayans brothers. And what I honestly, again, so I'm not trying to shit on this movie because again, there are parts that I like about it. It was just a really weird, surreal viewing experience for me today to like rewatch this.
Mhm.
But I feel like because it was such a rush production, because there were granted the first one had 6 writers, so this one just added 1 more and whatever. But it really, to me, feels like that this movie is written like it's a bunch of sketches that they just kind of said, hey, writers, watch these movies, write some sketches about them that they kind of string together into a quote unquote plot. That's kind of, and I don't feel that way about the first one.
Yeah, I think the first one had a little bit more time because I do
Mhm.
remember reading about or they had an interview. I don't know where I got it from, but Sean and Marlon said they wrote that script like 7 times and their brother
Wow.
Keenen rejected every one of them
Holy.
until they got it right.
Okay, so they had the
so
luxury
they-
of being able to do it multiple drafts.
Yeah, so they had plenty of time because they really wanted to do it and it took them years.
Mhm.
And
Right.
and rejection from their own brother was pretty tough.
I mean, honestly, I respect Keenen for that a lot, actually. I don't know much of the story about the production of the first one. I'm imagining they probably had the script, I guess, after Keenen approved it, and then they sold it, like Miramax bought it, I guess.
Probably, I don't know that part of it,
Yeah.
but I do know that Keenen rejected every time they came up with an idea until they got it right, and then maybe he took it there or sold it or something.
Mhm.
But
Right.
it just became a hit, and if you watch it, it does. It takes Scream, and it just keeps it going throughout.
Mhm.
Where this one, they're talking about, unless you're familiar with House on Haunted Hill and all these stuff. If you watch those films, because at the time they were popular, I did see it in the theater,
Mhm.
and The Haunting and all that stuff. But this one, like you said, it does feel like there were multiple sketches and they just intertwined and moved the story along. And I think the only part that kind of moved it was the character, the Dwight. Then you had the professor that kind of kept it going throughout. But like I said, you had to really watch those films, and I think the films that they used,
I don't think they're as good. Or
yeah,
not,
I
maybe
don't
not as
think-
good, but they don't have the kind of the big impact that Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer did for that first film.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Well, luckily, Miramax gave them plenty to work with. So while the first one had a budget of $19 million, they were handed a $45 million budget for Scary Movie 2.
Yeah, but they still had a shorter time. So
Yes.
you can give someone a gazillion dollars, and if you got 6 months to create a film and you starting from scratch, it doesn't matter, because when it boils down, you got the time, you got to find the set, you got to build the set, you got to get the actors ready.
Well,
You got to get all that in 9 months.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you at all. There was one funny anecdote, though, where, like, the James Woods character, Father McFeely, he was originally cast with Marlon Brando, and he got $1 million for it. He filmed for one day, unfortunately contracted, I think, pneumonia and had to back out. They let him keep the money and then paid James Woods another $1 million to work for 4 days to do the opening of the film.
Madness. Apparently, they also wanted President Clinton to do that role, and he was like, no, thank you. Like, can you imagine President Clinton doing this role where he's like humping Natasha Lyonne? Can't imagine.
Well, it would be kind of funny because then it get to the point where, you know, when I guess the Kane's wife was, you know, entertaining comic folk. I mean, was it common folk or something? And then Anna Faris, Anna Faris character grabs a dress and it has like a stain.
Yeah.
Like, do you all remember that? Like,
yes, the cum stain where she looks at it and she goes, ew. I mean, I actually feel terrible because we've gone like 30 minutes and haven't even just mentioned Anna Faris, who I do think her and Regina Hall are like the backbones of this franchise. They are so funny. Yes. Their comedic timing is perfect.
Yeah. They're selling even the weak jokes. I do think a lot of the men are kind of falling down a little bit on this. I do think the two Wayans brothers have their characters down pat. So as long as you like what they're doing, then it's fine. But like, oh man, David Cross and...
Well, we'll talk about the low-hanging fruit of some of these jokes.
Low-hanging fruit. That's a good one.
Is that a joke because he can't use his legs, Trace? Rude.
A little bit. Also in the first one, you have that Miss Man character who has literally like low hangers.
Oh my gosh. When I saw that in the theater, I was on my knees. I was laughing so hard because I was trying to convince. I said, no, that is a woman. And then somebody was like, no, that's a man. And I was like, no, it's a bodybuilder. Yep. It's really a woman. She just really worked out a lot.
But that's humor, right? That's humor. I mean, again, maybe you could tweak it by, but like that would not be made today because that is.
Oh no, Miss Man.
The minute she shows up on screen, you're just like, oh no.
And they touched her elbow. She's like, ah!
Oh, no. Anna Faris is like, ugh. Like, the way she does this, like, I swear to God, like 50 times in each movie, and every time it's just funny, which is like, ew. So, okay. This movie's actually, it was the least successful entry in the franchise, money-wise, up until the fifth movie, which really fucking bombed. This movie, but it does open with $20.5 million, which is pretty strong, I think. It goes on to gross $71.3 million. So I think if we're talking, it was the weakest at the time, like $71 million for a hard R-rated comedy is really, really good.
Especially in 2001 or whatever. Yeah.
I think it's just because it's such a steep drop from that first film and they invested so much more in it. You can't help but look at it as a commercial failure by comparison.
Yeah, and that's because the second most successful one is the third film, and Ivotres, you had mentioned that the Wayans sold it off, so I don't know if that's the exact politics behind it, but if it is, like they bring in Zucker, the guy that is Airplane, and they PG-13ify it, and I remember, okay.
That's how you make more money.
I remember being, like I couldn't see these movies in theaters, and I remember seeing the commercials for Scary Movie 3, and it would always have like this film is not yet rated at the bottom, like the tag, and I was like, I remember praying to God, because I was like really like super Catholic at the time, and being like, please let it be PG-13, please let it, and my mom looked at me and goes, it's not, those movies are really raunchy, and I was like, no, please, and I remember seeing PG-13 for the first time, and I literally was so happy. I made my mom take me to go see it, and she did not like it. But
I was going to say, I cannot imagine that went well.
So this does not get really good reviews by critics. We're looking at a 15% on Rotten Tomatoes with an average score of 3.5 out of 10, but a Letterboxd score of 4.8 out of 10. And yeah, again, like this is one that I think when you mention this franchise, I really think this is the movie that people talk about the most. I think it has the most memorable jokes in it, be they good or just plain offensive. And I think that's probably where the staying power comes from for this movie.
Right.
No, you can rebut that, Ivotres.
I mean, this movie is time, because I watched it again, and I just laughed. I think because I love the movies that it was referencing. Because when I saw it in 2001, some of the movies I've seen. I think my knowledge of horror grew from there. So obviously I've seen, the Haunting, the House on Haunted Hill. There was a Mission Impossible reference. John Woo in his films. I think that is Mission Impossible.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Number 2.
He always got to have them birds and pigeons everywhere. And I mean, there's so many, and there's Hollow Man. See, I've seen those films even before that film came out. And then now when, as an adult, I see that those were remakes of different ones and stuff like that. So some of them you had to really think about it, because there's House on Haunted Hill. However, they were parodying that, but then there's also the House on Haunted Hill. Wait, with Vincent Price. Now, and then I was like, the skeleton. So that's where that came from, because I was trying to figure out, where's the skeleton? The only place that I could get that from was House on. I mean, there's other spots that it probably could have came, but that's the only reference that popped in my head.
So you are right. Actually, I didn't even think about that being a thing, but there actually is, in the remake of The Haunting, Lily Taylor like fishes through a fireplace and pulls out a skeleton.
But I think even like the herky-jerky motion that it has when it's chasing Brenda and Cindy down the hall, it's 100% the exact same herky-jerky motion from the Vincent Price one.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking about an example, and so we can move into the plot now, Joe. But like in the opening scene, whenever they're blessing Natasha Lyonne, you have Andy Richter going, "And who got that unholy bitch Jerry kicked off of Survivor?"
Right.
That is like a season 1 or season 2 reference to Survivor.
Season
I
1.
know what it means. Okay, because I remember Jerry, but like again, is that joke funny to anyone today? You know, so it's that kind of stuff where I'm like, there's certain jokes that work because I think the situational aspect of them works, but when they dive into like a specific deep cut Survivor reference, because at the time that Jerry stuff was fucking huge, it was everywhere.
Oh yeah.
But no one today who didn't live that is going to know that. So that's my only issue with some of the jokes in this movie.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I can agree with that. Yeah, you're right.
I'm not trying to prove you. I'm not trying to be the negative Nancy here. I actually do enjoy some of this movie.
Yeah, but then you also have, someone, what is Survivor? What movie is that? Or something.
Yeah.
Oh, God. That's how we all feel fucking old.
And to be fair, like, I don't think that, the first scary movie it came out like 5 months after Scream 3 came out. So there'd already been 3 Screams and 2 I Know You Did Last Summers. And so, yeah, with this one, it was kind of like, oh, they're targeting movies that were big at the time, which, again, it's like Hollow Man, it's The Haunting, it's The House on Haunted Hill, which, it's kind of like they're guessing which ones are going to be cultural milestones in 20. I mean, not that they would care, because they got money for it, but just in terms of staying power.
But it is true, right? Like, with the first film, they had the luxury of knowing that Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer were already certified hits. Like, they landed big, they were well regarded by horror fans, so they knew that they were good properties to build off of. Whereas here, it was like the timeline that it went into production, they would have been guessing about whether these films would work. And it's like, anybody who's seen that new Haunting movie, new 1999 Haunting, like, it was disappointing at the time, but they didn't know that.
Well,
right.
And then also the reference from the first one was Blair Witch.
Right.
Yes, and that was super popular.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and I think you can tell, though, because, they only use that one bit from Blair Witch, which is,
from the trailer?
Yeah, the snot nose running. But, hey, it worked.
Yeah.
It does work.
When she's waiting in the car, and then he was like, "Oh, we're going to talk to this defenseless girl sitting here waiting
my God.
for her boyfriend." And she's
I love that.
I was like, I laughed. Oh my God, because it's like, have you ever thought he could be murdered to death? She's like, oh yeah, and then all of a sudden the killer comes out and like drag her out of the car.
And see, that's where it's kind of like, but that's like a genuinely funny thing. Which, okay, you're kind of commenting on a standard horror trope. At the time, people were more aware of tropes because Scream was like mainstream pointing them out. Yeah, whereas. Yeah, and so I like that. Whereas, I mean, again, I'm laughing at Jerry getting kicked off Survivor, but again, in hindsight, it's probably not really a genuinely quote-unquote... It's not a staying power of that kind of scene.
Yeah. Yeah, because one works... Like, one is funny regardless, and the other one is like, if you don't get this reference, it doesn't work at all.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's go into this. So we're going to do the movie kind of in segments because that's kind of how it's constructed. It doesn't really have a huge overall plot. But I did want to say one thing before we get into this. We're obviously, we've acknowledged it a couple of times at this point, but this movie is built on offensive humor. And I think it should be acknowledged that there's a lot of gay panic in this particular movie with the character of Ray, and just from our perspective as a queer horror podcast, obviously we wanted to touch on that. But I think part of this is that it's hard to be offended by any of the jokes in any of these first two Scary Movie films because everyone is a target. Like women are targets, Black culture is targets, queer culture, transphobic humor, none of it has aged well, but it's all working in the same way because everybody is going to get hit at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think on that note, I mean, again, it's also like, we're in 2021, looking back on 2001 films. It's hard. It's not fair to this film to put those kind of standards on it, but also that just kind of was the humor at the time. It wasn't just Scary Movie 2 that was being homophobic or doing gay panicky things. That was teen movies. Some of my favorite, She's All That does that shit, and I love She's All That.
Yeah, there was a lot of bro equivalent humor happening at this time. So this was very much just what was happening at that cultural moment.
I will say the jokes with Ray never really bother me when they're just oh, he's gay, that's the joke. I mean, I get that I should be offended by that probably. It's more so when other people are bothered that he might be gay. If it's just, oh, he sent a sexy photo to Dwight, that's oh, silly, he's gay, whatever. I'm not really bothered by that. But when it's oh, Ray fucked me and that would be the worst thing that ever happened to me, that's kind of where I'm oh, that doesn't really make me laugh very much. Even though again, I know it's riffing on Dude, Where's My Car, which that's also random to me. That Scary Movie is pulling in Dude, Where's My Car.
Oh, boy. I also want to point out something that it kind of just flew in my brain that I think this film worked, or both of them, or all of them. Well, I would say these two because they really focus on the offensive part. But I want to say that the Scary 1 and 2 worked because of who made them.
Right.
I think if they were not Black, it wouldn't work. I think it becomes more offensive during the time. And I know how that sounds, but I'm just trying to think of how the culture is. Okay, if Black people are doing offensive things, we find it funny. Mm-hmm. But if it was turned the other way and they wrote the exact same film, it would be a problem if it was non-Black.
Huh.
So in a way, they almost had more creative license because they could get away with it. Is that sort of what you're saying?
Kind of. Yeah. I mean, I've seen films where it was flipped and it didn't go so well, or someone's idea sketches or something, and it's oh, they're being blackface or they're discriminating towards. But when I see Black culture doing the same thing, it's they get away with it a little bit. It's not. Now I want to say get away with it because it sounds kind of offensive, but I'm saying that they're
more successful at it, maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I wonder if that's maybe it's an extra insight because it's a marginalized community, right? I've also seen even in the queer community, I've seen the same thing where I've seen queer people do things that I'm oh, that's kind of offensive, but it's not. I guess people don't jump on it as quickly as if it's a non-queer person making a queer joke, I don't know.
Well, it's like a comedy person. I mean, if a Black person talks about how white people are acting, or how anyone's doing, everybody's laughing. I mean, if you I grew up with Def Comedy Jam. They touched on everything. But if, the same type of, jokes was said by a white person, it'll be looked kind of differently, except for there are some who seem to get the free pass card because they learned how to tell a joke without offending any culture, by making fun of themselves in that culture. And there is a comedian, I can't think of his name, but he's been on Def Comedy Jam and a couple of them. And he's white. Oh my God, I can't think of his name. And he's really funny. He's married to a black woman, have kids and his friends. And he always make fun of himself not understanding black culture. And I think that's how you get away. Well, not get away, but that's how he's like, okay, it's not offensive. But when I watch these films now, like I'm thinking now, back then I was young, ha ha ha.
Is it Gary Owen?
There you go. Yeah, he is known for that. But that's how he started. He started everywhere else, but I think he made a hit at Def Comedy Jam. And then he went on from there. It was one comedy that came on BET that I used to watch all the time. And he made a killing doing it that way. But going back to the film, as a person thinking today, I think if I was, I'm watching it now, I say it'd be made today, it'd be offensive. However, because if you pay attention who's telling the jokes, because each one of the characters, Cindy, Brenda, they all have their way, but if you see who's telling them, it's not offensive at that time.
I think this was offensive back then, but people just didn't care as much because it was funny. I mean, sorry, not that people didn't, maybe that's the wrong way of putting it, but like, it was more okay to be offensive back then. And like Joe said, like, yeah, they're really offending everybody here. It's like they're just targeting one community of people. And so that's also what helps it in that regard.
But also it still goes back to who's saying what.
Right.
I mean, because you have Shorty who's saying, I want to get high like a nigga pie. I mean, you're not gonna, excuse me, I don't know if I can say it. But you're not going to see Cindy sitting next to him saying that too. I mean, it's who's saying it.
Yes.
It's written in a way for the joke to be said by a certain individual and doing something in the movies. I think that's how it able to work.
That's a good segue into the opening of this film then, actually, because we do have white people dropping the M-bomb in this first scene.
Yeah, we do. Because the way they are doing it. Okay. Yeah. Now think about how they're doing it. They're playing a song with the lyrics. That's how they were able. It was funny as because they're like, shake your ass, watch yourself. That's a real song, and they just did the whole lyrics. So it does cut to, if you ever remember when they were, it was like this thing, like, when is it okay to say it when it's in the lyrics? Right. And they played on that.
It's also parodying, white people who probably were singing that song at the time who looked really dumb singing it.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is the joke in this particular moment is about white people being foolish and not knowing better. So that is the joke. Like, you're meant to laugh at that, not the fact that they're saying offensive things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I will say I am a sucker for a vomit scene. So this opening sequence when they just take turns throwing up on each other kills me.
Are you a sucker for a poop scene?
I don't mind a poop scene. Like, I don't laugh as much at the parrot, like, shitting bullets against the wall at the end of this movie.
I love the parrot.
Oh, he was talking about James Woods in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Okay.
I laughed. I was crying. Because I had that happen. I've had situations like that. I didn't have flies on me, but
well, and see, that's something again. So I think that's a joke. That is, I promise I won't spend this entire episode being like, well, this is why this is funny and this is not funny. But that joke works for me because that's a reference to Amityville Horror, because the priest blesses the house and the flies come in. But it's funny regardless if you know that or not, because it's just flies coming on his shit. Like.
Well, and the way that it's also filmed, where you think that he is performing some kind of exorcism, and then it's, the edit reveals, oh no, he's actually just trying to have a bowel movement.
Hey, if you had a terrible bowel movement, it feels like an exorcism.
This is true. And honestly, these kinds of jokes remind me of some of these other, like, great, like, there's a lot of humor to be mined out of bodily functions. So I think of, the shitting scene in Bridesmaids, where she has to go in the middle of the street. And
Harold and Kumar go to White Castle with the battle shits.
Right. And
oh my god, was that too much of a deep cut?
I haven't seen it forever.
It's always when it's like a pretty person that's pooping. Like that's like, because they actually redo it in the fourth one with Carmen Electra. They have Carmen Electra in a village spoof. Like she's blind and she shits in the town meeting.
Oh, no.
Oh, wow.
Nothing like defacing a beautiful woman by making her do something vulgar.
Yeah.
But that's what makes it cool.
Yeah,
Yep.
That's the funny thing. Like, look at this gorgeous person. Although in this case, it's James Woods. But
Right.
Well, see, it took $1
Boo.
million to get him to do that scene.
it did.
Come on now.
Oh my god. That and humping Natasha Lyonne. Yes.
Oh,
Play
yeah.
this pedophilic priest named Father McFeely.
And the tongue scene. Oh, wow.
I do have one question. It always bothered me though. Whenever she's like, "Oh, your mother's in here with us," and he's like, "Mom, get out of there, please." She gets out and she goes, "You're no fun." Like she's asking a question, and I was always confused by that. I was like, "Why is she asking him if he's no fun?"
Maybe he used to be fun, and now it's like, you're no fun.
Well, you
That's
know
so
that
weird.
scene where Natasha has that tongue in her mouth?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Now that tongue, they had security in there because that's the tongue, and it's worth like, I don't know,
Wait.
hundreds. Huh?
The tongue, like
The tongue that was in her mouth, where she was waving it at James Woods' character, and he was like looking at her all sexually. The tongue in her mouth is from The Exorcist. They put it in her mouth,
Really?
but it
Oh,
had
wow.
it had security because it's from the actual movie. So there
Right.
was security in the room watching
That's amazing.
because it's insured and it's worth like hundreds of thousands of dollars. So
Man.
in order to film, whoever security was in there watching to make sure nothing happens to it. That's why you never see her put it, no one touches it, or
Right.
or she even puts it close into her mouth. She always have her tongue hanging out to make sure it doesn't get damaged. And as soon as they shot it, as soon as you were finished, they took it.
It goes back in the vault.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's too funny. Okay, shall we move on to the introduction of this giant cast of people?
Yeah, let's go. I'm reading my notes. I got the "y'all mean."
Yeah, so we open at college, so this is meant to be about a year after the events of the first film. We're reintroduced to Cindy Campbell, who is played by Anna Faris. We've got Brenda Meeks, Regina Hall, Ray Wilkins, played by Sean Wayans, and Shorty Meeks, Marlon Wayans, who are, even though several of them died in the first film, they managed to come back. Continuity is not a big thing for these films.
I'm telling you, I remember a TV spot though where where Shorty walks up to Anna Faris and she goes, "Didn't you die in the first movie?" He's like, "Yeah, but I'm back for the sequel."
Yeah. I mean, which is a joke that would fit right into this movie.
Yes, but they cut it out for some reason. I don't really get it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised to know that there are a million jokes on the cutting room floor, and this is like the ones that work the best.
Mm-hmm.
So we also meet new characters. We have Alex, who is played by Tori Spelling, and I had to look it up because I don't think they ever say her name in the film. I literally just read Tori Spelling.
Alex Monday, because that's the joke, right? Like she gets days of the week confused on her panties.
Right.
She had on Wednesdays, and it was Friday. But it didn't stop him, though. It didn't stop him.
No,
It did not.
People are actually pretty good at like not body shaming disgusting things in these movies. Like they're actually pretty like, if you're down to fuck, you will overlook a giant bush, you will overlook a small penis, you will overlook dirty panties.
Honestly, there aren't really any it's not really a lot of body shaming. Even in the first one, like the only like fat joke really is the Rose McGowan death, the garage door scene.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I digress.
Yeah. Although it is still funny because I get to quote that, "Oh, horsey, you scared me." So why is there a horse
true.
in a garage?
Don't kill me. I'm just a day player.
I do. Oh, see, those are the lines that really work for me because I'm like, oh, they're inside baseball, so people who know films can laugh at these,
Right.
but they're also timeless. Like that joke still kills 20 years later. That's from the first one, anyway. Okay, we also have Cindy's friend who wants to be more Buddy, who is played by Christopher Masterson. And don't worry, folks, that's the OK Masterson, not the canceled one. Sorry, the consequence one.
Joe.
I'm working on it.
It's okay.
We also have Sexy Theo, who is played by Kathleen Robertson, and they're all being targeted by Professor Oldman, who is played by Tim Curry, as well as his paraplegic assistant, Dwight Hartman, played by David Cross.
That could do everything himself.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will confess, I think for me, the comedy that has aged the least well is the depiction of Dwight. Like, I don't mind David Cross, but I find all of the humor about not being able to use your legs just so fucking ableist. And it's like, it makes me cringe quite a bit in this film.
I like him when he blows himself. I think that's funny, but then it just kind of, it's not even the fact that it's ableist, which it is ableist, but it's just kind of the fact that it takes the single joke and drives it into the ground.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like the funniest thing about him is the fact that he can't use his legs. And you're like, there are other jokes you could tell.
Granted, it's kind of the same thing with Doofy, but like Doofy has Gale Hailstorm to work off of in that original movie.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Come to think of it, Dwight doesn't have a lot to play off of.
Yeah, his defining characteristic is he's in a wheelchair and he likes to try to use his legs when it's clear that he can't. That is his shtick.
Yeah.
Or maybe he's just in denial. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or or it's one of those people who know they can't do something but don't want anyone to tell them they can't do it. So they insist on doing it even though they need help. Because when, he was trying to go up the stairs talking about cover me, and she's like, what? Cover me?
Okay, no, I think the part about that joke that works for me is her reaction to it, where she's literally like looking at him like, what are you talking about? Like, his joke isn't funny, her reaction to it is. And I think that's why Faris and Brenda and Hall get a lot of the stuff, because they get to react to a lot of the stupid things that are happening.
Right. Yeah. And their jokes, I think, are a little less controversial for the most part, because they're not defined by a single characteristic.
Like Brenda's affectation of, that's very, very bad luck. I will say the split the pole joke gets me every time.
Oh my God. Honestly, Regina Hall for me is... I mean, I love Anna Faris, but Regina Hall is the MVP of these movies for me, and I'm always disappointed whenever I watch them because I just want more Brenda.
Oh yeah, she's fabulous.
She's amazing. Okay, so the group is they're going to spend the weekend at this mansion, and when they arrive, they are met by a verbally abusive parrot, a very angry cat named Mr. Kittles, as well as the caretaker Hanson, who is played by Chris Elliott.
Fun fact, the DVD for this movie has those animated like menu things, and the parrot narrates the menu for you.
Oh my God. Does he swear at you?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. When I saw this, I was trying to... Okay, I'm... When before we even meet the parrot, we have to talk about the door knockers.
Oh God. Okay,
the balls.
I do think that's funny because I like the howling we get when she actually.
It was like knock knock. Oh! I want some door knockers like that.
Oh man.
I laughed and laughed. I just thought that was the funniest thing because, I mean, she didn't even think twice about grabbing them. She just knocked on them.
As you do.
Now, I don't know what people would think about that now, but it sure did work for me.
Well, okay. Does Mr. Hanson's strong hand work for you?
Oh my gosh. I'm willing to bet it works the charm for both of you, and I'm just over here in the corner being like, oh no.
The only thing I was thinking the entire time was like, that hand must stink. Like,
what?
Like I felt like I could smell the hand through the screen.
So it's nothing Chris Elliott, because Joe, I think we're of like minds on this. I don't particularly like Chris Elliott. I don't think he's funny, and I never really have. But what works for me about every time that fucking hand comes up is everyone's reactions to it. The dinner scene does go on for like...
It's just a little too long, yeah.
But again, watching them all just be so grossed out by this hand, it's just so funny. Even when Dwight's hanging off the house at the end of the movie, and he's like, give me your other hand!
Mm-hmm.
But it's not because of Chris Elliott, it's because of everyone else, how they're reacting to it.
Yeah.
That is very fair. Yeah, because I was thinking about this. I laugh when Kristen Wiig does it on SNL, or did do it on SNL.
Oh,
And
Junice.
So I think it has everything to do with maybe just finding Chris Elliott not that funny.
Maybe.
All
Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah, okay, we'll move on. So next up would be the Changeling Ball and the Nike Freestyle commercial, if we have any thoughts about that.
This Nike commercial goes on for 100 years. Like,
See,
it
and
is so...
The thing
Go
that
ahead,
annoys
no.
me about this is that the Changeling joke is kind of funny. Like, Tracy wouldn't get this because you haven't seen it.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it also, like, the Nike Freestyle commercial that built off of it doesn't actually do anything with the concept. So it looks like you're just watching celebrities reenact something.
But if you don't know about the commercial, what is this to you, you know? The biggest comparison I have for it is in Airplane. There's that whole running gag about the woman who's like, Jim never orders a second cup of coffee at home. Jim never does blah, blah, blah at home. Jim never does two of these. It's a reference to a commercial from the late 70s, early 80s. I don't know what it is. I don't know what they're parodying, but it's still funny because it works even without that context. So that's what I wish that would have been more of with this Nike commercial, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah,
sorry.
like
Continue.
if the joke is funny, regardless of whether you get the reference, then it's a good joke. And if it relies too heavily on that, then it is only going to age badly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be very curious to know from listeners, maybe younger listeners who do not know what this is, does this sequence make any sense to you?
Well, it's not even funny though. It's not it's not a joke. Like,
No,
it's just them doing something.
Yeah. It's not even a parody because it's not a joke. It's actually just them recreating.
Well, I
doing the
think it was
commercial.
probably, they had to rush to it. They had
Yeah,
to
right.
get something in.
It was a pop
And
culture
it was
moment that they were
popular
like,
during
cool,
that
let's do it.
time. I remember because I remember that commercial.
It was
It was to forever used to come on. So I guess
Mhm.
they figured, oh well, let's throw this in there.
No,
Yeah.
you're actually
So-
correct, because the runtime for this movie is 82 minutes, but 7 of those minutes are credits. So the movie is 75 minutes long, but if we really want to get sticklers about it, the opening scene is 7 minutes long. So the actual movie we're watching with Cindy and everyone is a 68-minute movie.
Wow.
Nice. Yeah, they probably sent the second unit off to like film that opening joke so that they could focus on all this other stuff too.
Yeah. But we gotta have Cindy go to the music room! The music room!
We're the fucking music room.
Did you like the Vitamin C cameo too?
I do like it when people kind of get angry at Cindy, like off camera or in voiceover.
I will say too that the jokes about Cindy like having the orangutan titties, like not looking like those do work too.
See, I felt offended. I was offended by that too.
Really?
I was offended because I have orangutan. So I understand that. That's
You're
the
like, I
only
feel your
offense
pain.
I have. So
Oh God. He tries to lick him.
gotta get into full Nelson.
I love it. I love it. There is that one gay joke here though where Buddy's like, where she's like, oh, share things with me, and he's like, that sounds kind of gay. Again, I think that to me is the most offensive gay joke in this movie, more so than anything that Ray does.
Oh my god, no.
Oh, the
I know.
clown.
I don't find it offensive. I mean, I get why it's funny because he's ass raping this clown, but like,
Yeah.
you just didn't see a lot of penises on screen. Right in the first one.
Well, he was
Much-
well, he did say it. He was like, "You like it tucked in or out?" And
Oh,
that
yes.
Yeah, that to me is actually the worst one because it's both transphobic and like it's afraid of queers and deeply transphobic. I'm thinking about like we're just past the 30th anniversary of Silence of the Lambs, and you basically can't make a tucking joke unless you're referring to that film. And when you think
Right.
of the legacy of it, it's not great.
I cannot believe he actually did that.
Like,
that
actually
was
tucked
so
it?
yeah, because when you're watching that scene,
Mm.
you're like, is it? You don't know what he's talking about, his shirt, and then
Mm-hmm.
when you see it, it's like, damn.
Okay, I will say though, being someone with a penis, I have 100% done that to myself in the mirror.
Oh,
We're getting real confessional on this episode, aren't
No,
we?
I mean not something. It was like when I was a kid, I did it. Like I don't know, you're playing with your penis, you find things to do with it. Like that was just something that I used to do.
Oh, I wouldn't know anything about that. Okay. I just know mine always stays tucked in. So. That's all. That's all I could.
I love it.
Okay, so we should maybe also talk about. Do you read the Tori Spelling sexual assault by Hugh Kane, who is played by Richard Moll? Do you see this as a homage to Nightmare on Elm Street and Tina's death?
I thought it was a poltergeist homage, because when the mom gets thrown around the room.
Okay, that's probably more likely since the clown is also poltergeist, right?
Right.
Yeah.
There's this. I just remember because there's a scene when the mom gets thrown around the walls. I do like. I mean, I guess will we call it a subversion where it's like, well, this is actually sexual assault. The image of the penis poking out the back of her head. That's something. But then she's into it, so
Yeah,
it's
she's into kinky stuff. So I think that's why it worked, because she was like, kinky is my middle name, bitch. So it just completely, made it okay.
Yeah, it starts as very problematic and then just becomes subversive.
Yeah. She was like, oh, I wish I would have freshened up. He was like, I wish you would have freshened up too. And looking at the thing, it was pretty, like, she just had these little tighty whities, and she had a little Murphy going on there, taking her everywhere. And then she was into that kinky stuff until, they're sitting there. She has a cigarette. Oh, Mrs. Huey King. And he was out of there. Cigarette flying away and everything.
I think this is something that was cut. And I want to say I couldn't find the interview, but there was something recently where Tori Spelling talked about how they cut out a lot of her character's stuff.
Yeah, because she has no character.
Yeah, like she's basically reduced to a cameo in this movie, despite the fact that, and that's another thing too, where it's like, just from a pure technical standpoint, like Hugh Kane in the end of this movie when they have to trap him on the fucking pad or whatever, I was like, wait, what's happening? Why are they doing this? Why does he care about Anna Faris?
It makes no sense, yeah. There's no motivation for the villain at all, really.
Mm-mm.
Which, again, is kind of fine. If you're looking at this movie as, well, tell me about the plot of Scary Movie 2, it's going to be a rough ride. But if you're just watching it from sequence to sequence and joke to joke, then it's fine. Can we talk about Anna Faris fighting a cat? Because I deeply enjoyed that.
My goodness. I think that was the best fight scene I've ever seen.
I just love it when it breaks the bottle. And then
but here's my issue. And I do think it's a funny scene. I love her saying my pussy's going crazy. I love it flipping her off. This is a Rocky parody in Scary Movie 2.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we
why?
getting a Rocky parody in this movie?
Yeah. For the same reason we get a Charlie's Angels.
I guess we have to go back to, we had to find stuff to throw in such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only thing I could come up with. 9 months researching, casting. I mean, they were pretty much like against, remember they have their normal lives. They got kids, they got, wives, girlfriends, other jobs. No, I'm serious. Like, they have really was pushed to the limit, and I think that's why they gave up them rights.
Right. They were like, we did this for a couple of years. We're good. Thanks. They made their money and moved on.
That makes it.
Okay. Do we have anything to say about Ray and the poltergeist clown, or are we good on that front?
I mean,
well, the whole time I was trying to figure out who the hell is Brandon, because he brings up Brandon in the first one. I'm like, who is Brandon? I don't know. I'm just like that. I just was like, who's Brandon?
So it's Brenda, because he's called, basically there's a scene in the first one when he's having foreplay with Brenda and he puts football gear on her and starts calling her Brendan. And that's, I think, what he's saying. So he's pretending to fuck his imaginary boyfriend, Brendan. But again, as the first one tells us, he's not actually gay.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's interesting because there could be considered a commentary on this is me probably overstepping because it's obviously not my own lived existence, but there's like within Black men, there is the idea of like the DL, and where you say like, I'm not gay, I just happen to fuck guys on the side or whatever. And it feels like there's a bit of commentary about what's going on with Ray there. I mean, obviously you could just read him as repressed, but I don't know. Part of me kind of wishes that he would take it further.
I can agree with that, because I've met some Black guys who have said stuff like that. They're not. Yeah. So watching that, like even from the first one, I got it. Like the inside joke to that is I'm not gay, but I'm doing things that are gay. I mean, especially in the first one, he went to the bathroom, the glory hole thing.
Yeah.
It's like, really? It's there. And when he died, he's like laying on the guy's
and it comes down to subjectivity, right? Where it's like, okay, well, like I know why it's funny. I'm sorry, I know why it's supposed to be funny. I know what the joke is. Do I find that funny? And that's where humor, much like horror, is the most subjective of like emotions, right? Where it's like what one person finds scary, another person might not. What one person finds funny, another person might not. So again, like with these jokes, I'm like, I get why it's funny. I chuckle at some of them because I grew up in the early 2000s. I was in the midst of all that gay panic shit, so I get it. It just, I mean, obviously 20 years later, I'm just kind of like, okay. Like, I don't have to like find this funny anymore.
So I agree. I guess when you're talking about films, you always, I think at some point you have to remember where it came out, like the year, the time period, and actually critique it for the time period. Because if you try to critique it now, no, this ain't gonna work. I mean, you're comparing it to other films of today, and it just won't work. At least for me.
I also don't mean to imply too that like if you find that joke funny, it doesn't mean you're homophobic. Just like if any joke in this movie, like if we were to go that route, then literally everyone would be like culpable for anything in this movie because everything's offensive in this movie.
I think it's just important to acknowledge that there are going to be people who are going to watch this and be like, I can't find any of this funny because I am just repeatedly offended.
Right.
But I think it's actually more interesting to try to challenge which jokes work for you, if any, and why or why not. So like for me, I don't like this joke where he, it's another version of what happened with the Tori Spelling, where it's like you think it's going to go one way, it goes another way, but it's still a joke about sexual assault. Whereas for me, the joke about Cindy switching faces with Ray and they're both wearing the red dress from What Lies Beneath That Follows, I think that's funny because then the joke is, it's not like, oh my God, it's Ray in a dress. The joke is he got the dress on sale.
And he came down for a banana.
Sure. People like to eat bananas in these movies.
So this next set piece, though, Shorty's weed plant smoking him, that was one that drove the kids wild when I was a kid.
Oh my gosh.
I don't find this particularly funny, but I do know why it's funny, but it's just like, okay.
I laughed my ass off. I'm sorry. When he was getting that plant talking about, watering, getting all these rappers to do dumb shit, I got it. But, nothing, I love the hip hop Christmas album.
Oh, I do like that.
Oh, no, that I do like.
Goodness.
That one's good.
Was it Sleigh Ride in my 64, Jingle Balls, Frosty the Dope Man, Annie a Bitch, it's Christmas. All I want for Christmas is my Chargers drop.
Oh my God.
But the reason that works is because you could be like I can almost imagine an actual Christmas album coming out with some of those songs. Like the one, All I Want for Christmas are my Charges drop. I'm like, okay, I can 100% see that.
And see, that's something that it's parodying like those CD commercials that always are on TV. We don't have those anymore. So like, young kids won't get the reference, but it's still funny because there's a joke within the reference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I remember that. Hopefully they ever have I thought it would have been cool if they would have actually had CDs for their like gimmick or whatever to promote the movie or something like that.
God, that
they
would
would sell out.
I bet you if they had a normal production time, that would have happened.
Yeah.
Right. Because I remember when I think when The Ring came out and maybe Blair Witch, I heard rumors of people, this might be an urban legend, but I heard rumors that people had video cassettes left on their cars when they came out of the theater. So like you would watch The Ring and then come out and you would have a VHS tape on the windshield of your car.
Oh, that would be
that would be really cool. Come on now.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
You're like, that'd be really cool. And also fuck that shit. I'd give that to somebody I didn't like and be like, hey, can you just watch this tape? Tell me what's on it.
Oh, that's so mean. But that whole thing, obviously that's a poltergeist reference, but yeah, that was so funny. And he's like, I mean, that plant was kind of spooky.
I love the animatronic plant, yeah. And he gets rescued with Funyuns and Cheetos.
Well, that is where some of that $45 million budget went. Because to the stop motion effects of the plant and the skeleton.
Right. Those things don't come for free.
Yeah, and got smoked, and he said, I'm getting the high as a motherfucker. Tope, take it to the head. Take it to the head. Oh my goodness, that I just loved it. I think it's one of the best scenes. I mean, there's so many, but I think that was kind of one of them that were just, man, if they had more time, that's really good. So,
because it doesn't go anywhere, right? Like, it feels like the kind of thing where if you had more time and the budget that you can play around with, you could have that creature come back at a later scene. But here it's like they just rescue Shorty and then we never see this creature again.
No, I get sucked out the window.
Right? Like, oh yeah, if we had like a big showcase where Hugh Kane like teamed up with the pop monster and the clown and like all this, like a real you House of Horrors. Yeah. Oh yeah, we're about. I really think narratively speaking, and again, I know the narrative doesn't really fucking matter in a movie like this, but I really think narratively speaking, it's this last act, quote unquote act, assuming there's a narrative structure, that really you can tell they were just like, oh, finish the script, we got to start filming in like a week, because once he possesses Hanson, it's like, what are you doing? Like, so he's the bad. I don't know, none of that makes any sense to me.
Well, let's maybe jump ahead to some Hollow Man references. So Professor Oldman is killed. Tim Curry gets nothing to do in this movie, which is a bit of a shame, but Dwight gives them all guns and goggles. They're state of the art, which means that there's no money left for communication, so they get Dixie cups.
I know. I love Brenda's reaction to that. Those are Dixie cups.
I'm sorry. There is one good line from Brenda though. When Dan the Masterson brother. That's fine. When Buddy tells them, "Oh, we can't leave," and Brenda it's like they cut off the beginning, but at the end of her line where she pulls a cleaver out and she goes, "I will chop that little cripple up." Oh my god.
Or you could be like, Ray, get me some duct tape and some Vaseline. I was like, wait, what?
I will fight him.
I like the Dixie cups. I think they dip into that well about one too many times, because by the time the last time they do it, I'm kind of like, okay, we get the joke. Like, don't do it again.
Yeah, I like it when Anna Faris is doing it to herself, but not so much when she's doing it with Ray and he's just around the corner. Yes.
Exactly.
Or I really did love the whole splitting up. He was like, we're going to split up. And she's like, every time there's some you split up and y'all go together. What's no.
I feel like too, that's one of the few times that the movie was actually making a commentary on horror tropes. Yes. This movie doesn't really make fun of horror tropes specifically in this movie. Maybe because they exhausted it all in the first movie. But again, those were a lot of slasher tropes. There could have been, like, I guess, name haunted house tropes, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the one with Cindy looking like Hugh Kane's wife. Like, that's another one, kind of.
A little bit, yeah. Like some ghostly stuff.
Yeah.
The people being seduced by something that has a very scary face.
Yeah.
Which is why you put a paper bag over it and fuck it.
Yeah. But see, that's I think that's an insight thing, because I've met, in the Black culture, if the girl's got a nice body, it's okay, but an ugly face, it's either they have a pretty face or an ugly body or something like that. So the whole bag over the face is like, you'll still screw it. As long as the body's okay. I mean, I get that. See, I think to me it's an inside Black thing. I mean,
which is, it's entirely possible that we are not, because we are two white men, we don't have that insight. Like, we're not part of that culture, so we're not familiar with it.
Well, it was weird because my reference point was the Christian character in Nip Tuck. I think it's like season 4 does this to a female patient where she finds him very attractive and he's like, I will fuck you, but I'm going to make you wear this paper bag. And it's one of the worst moments of that series because it is so humiliating. Whereas here, I think it's like, it's a good subversion where you think Shorty's about to bite it. And then, of course, he ends up finding himself a lady friend.
But that trope, or not the trope, but like that kind of like the butterface phrase and like the bat put a bag over her head, like that existed before that.
Oh, well,
right?
Before. Yes.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, this is before that.
Yes, it is. Okay, so Cindy and Buddy investigate the furnace. This is where she awakens Hugh's skeleton, and it begins to chase her. And this, to me, is one of the funniest moments in this film.
Oh, no, it is the funniest moment in the film. And this has literally never ceases to make me laugh. Every time Brenda is like, let that shit just mutilate her white ass and leave.
Die. Yeah. Why does that bitch have to bring that shit to me?
And Cindy's like on the ground, like going, Brenda.
And she's like, die, bitch, die.
It's just so good. And I don't know if it's actually funny or if it's just because Regina Hall is so good at delivering these lines and giving off this attitude.
It could be her.
It could be her.
I mean, again, imagine people can say this line with energy, but yeah, it just there's something about Regina Hall's affectation as Brenda, like the way she speaks, it just makes it funnier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because she's speaking in that slang way or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I can't do it. I can't. She delivers way better than I could ever do.
Well, I'll admit, actually, on this rewatch, I did wonder if it was something where I was like, oh, fuck, am I a white person laughing at a very stereotypical depiction of a black woman and the way that she speaks? And I was like, fuck, is that why I like Brenda so much? Because it's
But then you have, it's, again, created by black people. So, again, that's where Ivotres is right, where it's like, okay, well, where is it coming from? Like, who is making these jokes?
Right, yeah.
Like, if you had a white person writing this movie, writing that character like that,
right.
Or even a white person doing the Brenda voice, that would be more offensive, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there is a very funny joke with Cindy early on where Shorty is trying to teach her, like, slang, and she's just so terrible at it. And then she ends up accidentally mugging that girl.
Like, run that shit, bitch. Yeah, me. Yeah.
And it's funny because you're like, Anna Faris could not be whiter in those moments, right?
But I loved it, though. I just laughed. She like, got that jacket. And that's when, to go back, that's when like, oh, be very careful. Somebody just got their ass whooped and got their jacket stolen.
And see, no, that's like a call. I'm great. It's from like the
callback,
previous scene, but the callback works. I love that. Like some white girl got her ass beat and got her jacket stolen today.
So good. Okay, why don't we hop ahead to Cindy and Buddy in the freezer? So this is where they get locked into the freezer and they have a misunderstanding about taking their friendship to the next level. She thinks that means doing things like recreating walking on the moon, while he manipulates her into giving him a hand job.
Yeah.
So I do think it's a very juvenile joke. My qualm comes not from the fact that it's a juvenile joke, but more so that they already did it in the first movie, and it's also doing a Titanic reference, which they also did in the first movie when they make you think it's a Titanic 2 trailer, but it's Amistad 2. So it's not even the fact that I find this whole set piece particularly.
I'm like, I didn't find any of this funny, but listening to you laugh, Ivotres, is like killing me right now.
That
Your
is like
is so
the
great.
best scene. Oh my god, I'm like, it tears. Oh my goodness.
My issue, is that they're just redoing what they did in the first movie, which I'm like, okay, like if I had not seen the first movie, I would find this very funny. What I actually find funnier about this scene, I mean, okay, again, we have the huge semen thing, which is just, the splat noise is great. I actually think the funnier moment is when she builds the bulldozer out of like a slinky.
MacGyver. He's the only one that could do that.
Yep, some duct tape and Vaseline. She's got herself a full-blown bulldozer.
Hey, MacGyver, man. Maybe that was, I don't know. Because I don't remember nothing like, well, you know what? Wait a minute. Wait, in Hollow Man, there was something where she did something to get out of there.
She builds like a magnet type thing, which but it's kind of quick. It's not like the Shaun of the Dead fast style editing where it's like boom, 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 boom. But it's not like that where she grabs a couple things and she has a magnet already and she can like slide the lock over. But in this one, she builds like a mini bulldozer. And I will reiterate Anna Faris like doing this fucking Dixie Cups, and she's like, "I'm not getting anything. It must be these walls or something."
Such a dumb joke, but it works because of her.
But what I do love how the way they did it, even in such a short amount of time, is that they'll show someone doing something ridiculous, and then the people watching will either roll their eyes or know that they're doing something ridiculous. Yes. I mean, if you ever catch that, I mean, it's not like everyone's falling for it the entire time.
And I think those moments do work well in this movie. I mean, again, I watched Scary Movie 5 today, and there's a scene where the girl from Modern Family is doing the tongue split from the Evil Dead remake.
Okay.
And she basically is about to put the box cutter on her tongue, and then looks at the audience, raises her eyebrows to be like, uh-huh, and then like makes a joke about it.
Oh,
like,
no. You're like, I need the other characters to have the wink, wink, nudge, nudge, not the, hey, audience, do you get this joke?
And I think, I think this movie is stronger for not breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Shorty did break the fourth wall in this one. Because remember when all three of them were standing there after the three took off, and he looked at the screen, was like, ain't that about a bitch?
Right.
And they were all three, and they was like, oh, we go die, y'all.
I will say, I often feel like Shorty is in his own movie in these first two films. Like, he's just off doing his own thing. And it's kind of a great showcase. But I'm also like, why is he not more integrated into the rest of this movie?
His part's bigger in this movie, too. It's even smaller in the first one. Oh, no, I guess his whole thing is he's a stoner. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's her brother, and so they're just...
Yeah. Right. Oh, right. Did they
Which
even
they never address in this movie? No.
We can skip this wheelchair gunfight.
Yeah,
this goes on for too long.
It goes on for too long. It's not funny at all. Let's jump forward to Hanson being possessed, and we have this Hannibal joke where Whack Pack member Beetlejuice is living inside Shorty's head. I was like, oh, I do not get this one at all.
I don't get it either. I was not in on this joke.
I was like, I do not watch Howard Stern. I do not know who Beetlejuice is. I had to look him up to see if he was a real person or if it was just supposed to be a funny character living inside Shorty's head.
When I first saw that, I was like, man, they made him look bad. No, because I didn't know who that was until I saw him in something else, and I was like, oh, that's him. I was like, oh, I didn't know. I thought it was makeup, but it's not.
Yeah.
That's
how he looks.
Oh my goodness. I'm not laughing at that. I just thought, no, because I didn't know who he was. When I saw, I was like, I didn't know nothing. I just thought it was the makeup to make him look like that. And then that's who he is. And it made him look a certain way, type of person.
But I think that's an example of how the parody doesn't work in this case, right? Because none of us know who this is, so it just becomes an odd man living in the head, and then because we can't identify him, we think, oh, okay, this is a makeup and prosthetic thing.
It's kind of a thing, where it's like, okay, is he meant to look like a mentally handicapped person, or is he meant to be a racial like a racial caricature of some sort?
Yeah, I couldn't figure that out, so it was kind of... I was laughing when it came out. I was laughing because I was like, "Oh, that's messed up." But later, you're like, "Oh man, I feel bad because I didn't know who he was."
Well, at least though, it still kind of makes sense because we're doing Hannibal, right? Like that's, I guess, a horror movie. But then the whole climax is
Charlie's Angels.
Charlie's Angels.
Wow.
I will say that the pee joke with the fountain, really, I do like that. And I love
Do you like the inflatable boobs?
the inflatable boobs. I like the inflatable boobs.
I do like Hansen getting very frustrated with how long it takes Cindy to do her like flying kick.
Mm-hmm.
He's just like, come on. But then him hitting her with the bat doesn't land. It's not a good enough joke for me.
Well, that first movie ends with kind of a Matrix riff when she's fighting
Yes.
Ghostface, which, okay, so they're just doing this again, but also, like,
Yes.
doubling the length of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then when she was trying to find her different karate moves,
Right.
Yes.
the monkey, the drunken monkey,
The mad cow.
I was just like, this is stupid. And then she ends it with the camel toe. The camel toe just really kind of like, wow.
And you know, I think, but the camel toe was really popular at the time because of that song Camel Toe.
I never heard of that song, camel.
Oh my god.
This middle-aged lady, I gotta be blunt. Her Spanish biker shorts were creeping up the front. I could see her uterus. Her pants were too tight. She mustn't own panties and were none in sight. She walked right by. The poor woman didn't know she had a frontal wedgie, a camel toe.
I have to see like when it came out. Camel Toe song, fanny pack. It's 2003. Oh, actually, fuck yeah. Camel Toe was after this movie. 2 years later. Shit.
I've never heard of it.
Oh my god.
The female anatomy that most catches my attention because it is so 2001 in this is actually Theo's thong that's exposed when she's trying to seduce Dwight, because I'm just like, oh, this is that period of Slave for You and Xtina doing Dirty, where it was like to show the top of the thong above your pants was the hottest thing. I'm like, oh god.
Yeah.
Supposedly they tried to get Christina Aguilera and Britney Spears for the Natasha Lyonne role in the beginning of this movie.
That is a terrible role for both of them. What did they think?
Yeah, I don't know. But they go from those to Natasha Lyonne, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense, but okay.
Like, it's a better fit if you're thinking about the opening of 3, where you've got Jenny McCarthy and...
Pamela Anderson.
There we go, yeah. I was just like, those boobs are so big, I can't even concentrate. Okay, so we're basically at the end. Like, they get rid of Kane. It's a very wah finale, but I do kind of like the brief moments back on campus with Cindy and the parrot, and then Buddy running away as soon as trouble arrives because Hansen is just unexpectedly back, and then we get a redo of that first film where he just gets run over by Shorty in a car because he's getting roadhead.
Yeah, which is it's a repeat of 2 jokes from the first movie, actually, because
it opens and closes with
yes.
Yeah. That is Scary Movie too.
I mean,
yeah.
I'll just say I did laugh talking about it, like talking about these jokes. So
Yes.
I think that's I'm gonna like co-sign with you, Joe, or as a communal experience, maybe watching this like is more because I used to love this movie when I was younger, but it was also because it felt taboo because it was so nasty, it was so R-rated that I was like, oh, I'm getting away with something by watching this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think, you know what, you give me some weed, a couple beers, or in my case wine, and like 4 people in the room with me, or a crowded theater, this is gonna play like gangbusters.
Yeah.
Ivotres, how does it hold up for you? Is it still as funny or different funny?
It's not as funny because I get it.
Right.
It's okay if it is. I don't want to guilt you into saying it's not that funny.
No, because when I first saw this, it was in a theater. The theater was packed. We were ready to go because of the first one, and we laughed, and there was some, we just enjoyed ourselves, and I think being in that atmosphere made a difference. Now, I just recently watched it by myself again, and I couldn't get through it the first time. Not because there was anything wrong with it. It's just like. I just got really tired and I cut it off
Right.
to watch
it
it
wasn't
again
holding you the same way.
because I was looking at the movie. Anytime I do anything like this, I look at the movie a little differently, and it just there were some funny parts. She's driving the car, and we all sing in the car, and then the radio tells her to shut the hell up. The bird, I still likes the bird. I just find that just
I think the shitting bird is great.
bird, the weed plant coming alive. I mean, there's some parts that really worked,
Yeah.
and then there were other parts that just didn't hit the mark or didn't make any sense for what was going on. And then, then you read about how they were forced to rush, and it shows that. And that's really sad because the first one, like I said, they wrote it so many times and then until it was approved, and they had time and years and rewrites. This one, they didn't have that much. And I think that kind of the studio pushing to have it done, and they probably was under contract. I mean, there's probably all kind of things that we probably don't know about it, because I was thinking, why didn't they say, no, we're going to do it but they probably was under some kind of contracts. So I think it pushed it. And I think that kind of pushed them out of it altogether. They probably like, oh, hell no, we're going to do our own thing. And then they came up with White Girls. So,
which I secretly fucking love.
Oh, I love White. I don't secretly. I actually hadn't seen it until I honestly right before I got married, because my husband made me watch it, and I was like, I'm not gonna watch that. That's stupid. And then I watched, and I fucking loved it.
It's also very cringy, but again, it's like it's the kind of thing where if you can get on board with the humor, then you will find it funny. If you sit there and want to talk about why it's offensive, then I mean, you just shouldn't ever go into a comedy being like, well, I'm prepared to be outraged by this. Like, you kind of have to make that agreement with, I guess, a horror film and a comedy, but particularly with the Wayans brothers, like, they've got a very distinctive brand of like trying to hit your buttons in that regard.
My question was going to be actually, have either of y'all seen A Haunted House or A Haunted House 2? It's not directed by a Wayans brother, but Marlon co-wrote both of them.
No, I have not.
They released A Haunted House 2 a year and 3 months after A Haunted House 1.
Oof.
This is 2013 and 2014.
Nope. I had no interest to see them.
Well, I guess the fear is that you would end up getting something like this, right? Because this is meant to be a Wayans haunted house film.
Well, I just think the timing is weird because A Haunted House comes out January of 2013 and Scary Movie 5 was a few months later, and they both do Paranormal Activity. But Scary Movie 5 doesn't have the Wayans brother.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Interesting. So on that note, I actually have a very quick game for both of you. So thinking about how the scary movies obviously lampoon current and historical films, if they ever rebooted this or made another one, and say the Wayans had all the time in the world to make it fantastic, which horror movie would you like them to parody?
I have to choose The Conjuring.
Oh. That's actually not
That's
bad, though, because
good.
you could do the whole Conjuring universe. You get Conjuring, you get Annabelle, you get... What else is there? But there's a bunch of them. There's like 5 of those movies.
Yeah, there's The Conjuring, the Nun, all that. I mean, then you have Insidious.
Oh, so you're doing like a whole Wan universe. Got it. Okay.
Maybe, I could see that. Yeah. I could see them do, because there's some really frightening things, but I think if they add, their element from the first one, I think they could really come on top. Because The Conjuring's popular, Annabelle is very popular. They could
the
really
doll
do
shit. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they would kill it with stuff like that, the way things are going, and throw Host in there. Yeah.
My thought was to do elevated horror movie, which is basically just all the A24 films. So you do Hereditary, you do It Comes at Night, you do The Witch, like you do all these slow burn horror films that, and obviously the title itself is a joke because elevated horror isn't a thing, but I would just love to see a spoof of all those fucking movies.
Oh yeah, like Midsummer.
Yes.
Yeah. So you would call the movie elevated horror.
Elevated horror movie.
Terrible.
I could see that.
Joe, do you have one?
So my pick was similar to yours, Trace. I was thinking the popularity of Hereditary and just how you could turn that into offensive jokes. Like, I'm thinking about how people already make jokes about the decapitation in that film. So it'd be fun to see, well, fun in quotation marks, to see how the Wayans brothers put their spin on that kind of material.
Well, and also, I mean, I guess it'd be more satire at this point if we're going into social structure. But like you could have like the like Christian in Midsummer. He's like such a shitty ass boyfriend, right? So you
Right.
have this terrible person, and the Florence Pugh character is so oblivious, like when he's like fucking another girl in front of her or something.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, or just a bunch of characters running around in bear suits getting set on
Yeah.
fire.
Yes, exactly. It comes at night. You think about, oh, the It's coming, but obviously there's nothing because that was the big complaint people had about that movie was there was no It.
It's just one character sitting in a room waiting for something to happen the whole movie. And then at the end of the credits, it's like a door slams.
Yeah, there's so many movies now that is so popular that has really good concepts they can use. But I think they probably be out of it. But just, I mean, if they ever sat there and like, oh, I really want to do it again for the fans, for the love of scary movie.
Come back for 25th anniversary. 25th anniversary.
Yeah, those, I would pick the films that you could just have so much, from them. Hereditary, that were popular, that people, a lot of people have watched. Choose a movie, you could do a lot of things. Like Hereditary, there's so many elements that's fucking crazy. The mom banging her head against the ceiling, the headless body floating away up to the the decapitation, the possession. You see, there's so many things. I think if you choose films that doesn't have any iconic moments, then I think it becomes dull because now you have to pull out of it. If you have to pull something out, it's doomed to fail. When you have so much to choose from and they're all equally exciting to see, I think that's when your audience would love it. Most of your audience would love it because, oh, I know what that is. Oh, I know what that is. I know what that is from that movie. You could pick any part of the movie and we know what it is.
Well, that has been Scary Movie 2, everybody. So, Ivotres, before we sign off, this is your chance to talk about yourself. Where can people find you on social media, and is there anything happening that you'd like to plug?
I do have a YouTube. There'll be more content, horror movies and beyond. Starting in March, I'm gonna have more stuff on there. My Raw reviews, my Raw podcast will be back because I just got finished through Shudderary, which took the life out of me, but I loved it. I'm always on Twitter, mostly on Instagram, just posting stuff about horror collection. I collect things and stuff like that. And a lot of things I do promote is just inspiration. Just, be yourself, work, do your best, work hard. Because I always say the journey is always better than the destination. And keep doing what you're doing. Even if you think no one's watching, someone's watching. And you just never know who's looking at you. Don't worry about how many people you have. That's just someone clicking on something, but it could be 20 people looking at you and want to work with you. So just keep going. So that's just me, talk about horror films. And I always look at horror as a deeper meaning than blood, guts, and gore, even though that is wonderful to look at and talk about. But every horror story has a story, has a meaning. And that's what I learned doing Shudderary, talking to these people. They always throw themselves in their films. And I always say, if you can't make anything up, write what you know.
Yep. That's nice.
I like that.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you so much. No, that's actually a wonderful sign off. I don't even want to say anything after that, to be honest. But thank you for coming on the show. If you want to get in touch with us, you can reach us on Twitter and Instagram at Horror Queers and join our Facebook Horror Queers group to hang out with other listeners. Also find us on Letterboxd to see all the films we've covered. If you have a moment, please rate and review us on your podcatcher of choice. And of course, as always, if you want even more content, please support the show by becoming a patron at patreon.com/horrorqueers. We're doing March a little differently. We're going back to, the early days of the pandemic, Joe, where we do a new movie and then everything else is kind of a theme. So, oh Lord help us, in the spirit of the new Wrong Turn that came out last month, we're going to be doing kind of a hillbilly horror theme, or maybe mutant theme, or
a little bit, yeah.
We'll have episodes on the remakes of The Hills Have Eyes and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oof.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of my favorite films of all time. The remake, actually. I'm not even lying. So,
Yeah, you're excited.
as well as the new Wrong Turn, which I refuse to call a remake. It's just a movie with the name Wrong Turn on it. We'll also have a mini-sode on the iconic and controversial episode of The X-Files titled Home.
Oh, wait. Is that the one where the family?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I would love to come on that one. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So y'all check out our Patreon for that. But Joe, before we sign off, what are we covering next week?
Well, when next week's episode drops, it will be a week with a Friday the 13th in it, Trace. So we are going to tackle the gayest one of all, Friday the 13th, Part 7, a.k.a. Carrie vs. Jason.
A.k.a. The New Blood, which is the actual subtitle. But yes, it might as well actually be called Carrie vs. Jason.
Yes!
Yeah, so I'm excited for that. I actually, this is one that on a marathon rewatch, I actually liked this one a bit more than I remembered liking it in the past. So I'm excited to revisit it.
Yeah, I'm excited to break into that Shudder Factory giant box set. So
The Shudder Factory?
Shudder Factory? Scream Factory? Shuddery Scream? Yeah. Whatever I said. Yeah, that one. That box with a lot of Jasons on it.
Until next week, we can cross out Scary Movie 2.
Yes, and cross out horror queers.
You've made it to the end of another bloody, disgusting podcast. Congratulations. If you like our programming, consider searching for other bloody, disgusting podcasts, such as Creepy, Horror Queers, The Boo Crew, SCP Archives, Nightlight, Margaret's Garden, Nightmare on Film Street, and more.
Hello, I'm Shelby Scott, the host of Scare You to Sleep, a podcast where I tell you spooky bedtime stories full of creepy sound effects and music that is soothing yet unsettling to help immerse you into a world of horror. This is a show for those of us who have realized horror can be a strange but relaxing escape from reality. Speaking of escapes, sometimes I lead you through guided nightmares, like a guided meditation, but instead of flowery meadows, I take you on a journey through your own personal nightmare. So come get lost in the terror with me. Listen to Scare You to Sleep wherever you listen to podcasts, or find us online at bloody.fm. Sweet screams.